Oh, hello, hello. I think I'm live. Sorry, I'm just messing about with the cameras at the moment a little bit because trying to get a better exposure on the camera because it takes a little while to set these things up, set up all the kit and get going. And the light was actually pretty good when I was setting everything up. And of course, now that I've actually gone live, it's become really, really overcast. And the light is almost completely gone, which is a bit of a pain, frankly. But anyway, hopefully you can see the studio at the moment. You'll be able to see me in a minute. Yes, it is possible, Brenda, and thank you for leaving me a message. Thank you for putting a message in. So now that I know that you're there, so hopefully you can hear me, and hopefully you can see the studio, although it looks rather dark at the moment. I mean, it has gone so dark in here, just the last kind of 5-10 minutes. It's been really changeable all day. I mean, hopefully you can see me now. Can you see me now? I'm trying to remember where I put my phone. And the reason it's important is because the thing that I've figured out how to do today that I've never done today is to use my mobile phone as a camera to stream with in a live stream. And of course, I'm doing this and it's actually working amazingly enough. Hello, Raphael. Brilliant, thank you. You have the most interesting name. It's Shepherd. I take it that's how you pronounce your second name. So yeah, anyway, please do let me know where you are, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, because I'm streaming to both at the moment. Let me know where you are and if you can hear me okay. Granted, you won't be able to see very much at the moment. Let's see. It's going to be slightly chaotic today, and I'm just messing about with stuff. But I thought it would be interesting to show you a little bit of how the studio is set up. And in order to do that, I need to move things around, and I need to be able to show you some different areas of the studio. Kelly, thank you very much. Hello, Michelle. It came in at 144p. I should be streaming at 1040p, Michelle, so hopefully you can reset it. Just turning the wood burner up because it's also really chilly today, and the studio is keeping me snug. It looks like actually switched up. Oh, good. Hello, Dorian. 2 back, is that right? In Arizona. Thank you very much. So it looks like the light might be returning a little bit. It is raining and there's a heavy leaden sky over there. But you see, normally I have, I'll show you what I normally have when I'm streaming. So I've got this camera that you can see me on now. And then I've got a camera over here, which is obscured by this light. So I'll get that out of the way. I'm going to talk a little bit about these lights and how I use them as well. And actually, in some ways, it's maybe not such a bad thing that the light is bad today, because I can explain to you why and how I use those lights with daylight when the light isn't all that great. So this is the camera I normally have on the easel, which is over here. Is it in the shot, the easel? It's just out of the shot. And then I'll show you the view from that camera. Just to kind of, so hopefully it kind of demystifies things a little bit. Can't see anything on it because this camera is actually really bad at low light. So I need to put the lights on before you can see anything. So I'll try that again in a minute. But that's that camera. Let me swizzle this round a little bit. do that maybe, so you can see some of the easel as well. See, there's the easel, and you can see, hopefully you can see there's another camera on a boom over there. Light is getting slightly better, not brilliant. So I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna try and do now. This is incredibly risky and it's probably gonna make you ill. And I'm really sorry if it does. Hold on to your chairs, because I'm gonna pick up my phone, which I've now found and is over there. And I'm gonna, it's wirelessly connected. Kathy, thank you. Deborah, thank you. Yeah, my new digs. Yeah, cool, huh? My name is Linda. Folks often spell the German Shepherd breed name incorrectly. I bet that is a pet peeve. I grew up with German Shepherds, although we called them Alsatians then. I love them. What am I doing? I'm going to bring up the camera again. Yeah, actually, I can't believe this works. So what you can see me on now over there, over here, is I should be able to get on both at once, right? Freaky. So I'm looking at my screen so I can monitor what I'm streaming. I've got my phone over there and I've got my main camera over there. This is the one over here is a Lumix, Panasonic Lumix GH5, really good camera. So I'm going to pick this one up and I'm going to move around. Sorry about this. It's going to be wild for a bit. Just put my glasses on upside down. So let's go back. So now, hopefully, I've kept both views up so you can see like where I'm shooting from. So this is well back from the easel, so you can see pretty much here. It is a little dark, but you can see pretty much the whole setup. There's this camera over here. This is Blackmagic Studio camera with a zoom lens on it, which goes straight onto the easel, which is over here. My palette I keep here, which is just, it looks like a Posh Glass palette if I move that out of the way, but it's just a shelf from a fridge, an old fridge that we no longer use. And here is the camera, another one of these little Blackmagic Studio cameras. That's the camera up here that goes straight down onto the easel. I'll show you the view from that in a minute. This over here, this is the software that controls the streams. So I can switch cameras there. And then I've got one light here on this side. Now this is a Neewer 660 LED with a softbox on it. And I have the same thing on the other side here. Oh, and here is a still life setup that I have going on at the moment. I'll show you a little bit more in detail how I set those up. And this is my nice big window. This is the only decent window. Not a huge amount of light coming through it at the moment. You can see I've still got stuff all over the place and still have a lot of tidying up to do and, you know, things finding homes. And then over here, directly behind me, this is my only north-facing window in these deep-set, thick walls, and it creates the most beautiful backlight on objects. But it's so small. I mean, you can see how deeply set it is in the wall as well. It's so small that it doesn't give off enough light to really light a subject or to paint by. Okay, so that's two of the windows, and then there's right over this side of the studio is one more, east facing. But the thing about this window is it's mostly screened off by this wall outside. Can you see that? You see how wet it is and grey today. It's mostly screened off by the wall outside. That's the other part of the farmhouse. And it has shutters on it. So if I want only one light source in the room, I can close these shutters. Nice. Look at all this mess of cables and kit. I might talk about that in a little bit as well, like what I've got set up there. But at the moment, I'm keeping these shutters open. See, mostly, one of the things that I find when people take their own reference photos to work from, one of the things they most often get wrong is not controlling the light and having too many light sources at once. So if I have light coming in from this window and light coming in on the opposite side of the room from this window, and they're both getting into my setup here, then it will confuse the shadows. The reason it's not confusing them at the moment is mostly because I have the light carefully controlled. Okay. So on a very dark day like this, it's got dark again. Look, I don't know if you can see that out the window. It's actually raining. This is what I would do with these lights. So you can use them in the evening to paint by. I'm going to have to put this down because I need two hands to do this. I didn't think that through, did I really? Let me put this down a minute where it was. Does anybody feel like they're like seasick on a ship or something? Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, you can kind of see what's going on right there. So I usually have them up about the same level as the painting surface. Okay, so there's one raised up. This is the other one. Is this on the shot or not? Kinda, only on the phone. Bring that one up as well. And then I'll show you, actually I'm going to put a painting up on the board as well. Because if we don't have anything up there, it's not going to be such a good illustration of how I use the lights. LEDs are by far the best lights to use because they're good constant light. And unlike fluorescents, they don't have peaks at particular frequencies. But they're also a lot more powerful. How are we doing? Hello, Michael. Good to see you. Right, so let's try turning the lights on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the phone over so you can see the change. So ordinarily, if I'm standing back and looking at my painting, you know, I would be standing back here. And then I've got my painting. Obviously, this is one from a photo reference, which I was live streaming yesterday, of this back window here. That window behind me. And then I would have my subject here, you know. And if, like today, there's not really enough light to paint by, I would knock these lights on. And the reason I have one either side is because it ensures that I have a fairly even light. Knock this one on. Excellent. And then the one on the other side. When you have two lights like this, either side of your painting, it gives you a nice even light, but it's only really useful like this if you're working from a photo, because you see what happens to my still life subject is the light completely changes there. Now it's got a bit of light from the window, but it's mostly lit by my two lights. So I've lost all the clarity of the form. It looks very flat now. There's no real light and shadow in it. But the nice thing about these lights, let me show you the back, is that they have a little adjuster, so you can turn them up and down there, how much light. So depending on how much light there is on the day, I can adjust them and adjust the amount of light that the camera is reacting and resetting its exposure as we go. But I can decide, you know, I can reset how much light I have on there. And the reason, funny enough, that I got these in the first place was simply because when I was live streaming, I don't know, I mean, some of you will have been with me when I first started doing live streams, and this was about 4 years ago now, in the middle of the lockdowns in COVID. I just got all of this equipment for recording video, and then I realized I could live stream with it, so I started doing that too. And the reason I got the lights is the cameras, particularly these ones, the Blackmagic Studio cameras, are very sensitive to the light. So if the light would just change a little bit, it would get slightly more overcast. What would happen is the exposure of the cameras would change. And I can actually change the exposure of the cameras in here, in this bit of software, which is pretty astonishing. Like if I go into the cameras, this one is live at the moment, so I can change the exposure here. Brilliant. So, but I ended up doing more of that than painting. So then I got these lights because I realized after a while that video cameras basically need constant light almost all of the time. So now I've got those lights on. Let me put this camera down again. You can see I've got leads all over the place still. I really need to sort all of that out. Now I've got the lights on. If I switch to the view of the camera, which is on the easel, now you can see it. It's actually overexposed a little bit. Let's bring the exposure down. So that's on that's why I have the laptop next to the easel, so I can control that as I paint. Hello, Maya, good to see you. You're very welcome. I just thought it would be a bit of fun to show you around, you know, a bit of an informal stream today and show you how everything is set up. So I wonder if I can, maybe if I can pull back the zoom on this camera here, you can see, oh, that's as far back as it will zoom. But I can show you, hopefully, the still life setup. So the lights are very good for when I'm painting, but they're rubbish on the still life setup. So if I knock these lights off, sorry, I know I'm just in front of the camera now, then it's much better from that point of view, from a point of view of light and shadow. The problem, of course, is that with this camera, this Blackmagic camera, it's very, very bad in low light conditions, and I can't bring up the exposure of the camera enough. I can bring it up a bit, but not really enough for it to work properly. But this is basically how I set up my still lifes. I'm going to show you some of that too now. Talk a little bit about how these are set up. So let's zoom in with this camera so you can see both, hopefully both at the same time. Oh, I've got the camera in front of it. So the phone camera is actually much better. You can see you get much, it's auto-correcting like the exposure, but it gives you much better, it's much better in low light than those very limited video cameras. And I didn't know this until I bought the video cameras, that basically video cameras are pretty much made for having continuous lights. They expect you to have lights on all the time. Really, really frustrating. And I didn't know that, and now I do. There are good things about them too, like you can control them from a laptop. But this is basically, hopefully this will give you, let's switch back off this camera on the still life again, because that's not really very useful at the moment. So by the way, the software that I use for this, I'll show you the software I use to stream with, is this, OBS. So I can switch the cameras and which obviously isn't working for the moment, of course. Oh, there we go. I can switch the cameras to change what you see. So I've got basically, with the phone as well, I've got like 4 cameras going at the moment. And the more I think about it, the more I think that 4 cameras is actually like the minimum to be able to do really good streams with. So now you can see, where I'm holding the camera, hopefully, on the still life setup, and you can see a little bit more clearly how it is done. So if you just saw the photo, you wouldn't see anything around it, because it's the phone and it's a different aspect ratio. It's tall and thin. I can't show you quite how it would be. But the way that this is controlled, so this is just a board here. This is just foam core. It's a fairly large bit of foam core light and fairly sturdy. So that stops any light getting into the shadow side of the still life, right? So the shadows are clearer with that there. So it screens off any light coming from this side, which is my screens, and at the moment, the light on the other side of the window. The background is just a large piece of MDF, which I've painted pretty much a kind of a mottled neutral grey. This, funnily enough, is I got from a local antique shop that gets a lot of stuff in from India, and it's for kneeling on, for praying. but I just love the colour of it. I've got another board here now. This board is to create shadows on the right hand side. So if I take that out, it really changes how the setup looks. You know, so everything is light on the right hand side. If I put this board back in again, you get a much more, a kind of a, it is more poetic. It's much more atmospheric view of the light. Oh, it's got really, I don't know if you can see that, it's got really dark outside now. So I'm going to have to put the lights back on just so we can see anything. Let me put this down again. But I had to knock the lights off so I can show you how I deal with the light when I'm working by natural light. So when I take my photos, my reference photos, they are always taken in natural light with my Sony GH5, which is this camera that you can see me on now. I always take those, my reference photos with that camera. It's also a very good still camera and it's good at video. It's good for doing video too. So that's the main thing that I wanted to show you, is this is how I deal with the more tricky lighting situation I've got here, because this window here, my main window, is west facing. But the nice thing about it is the sun comes in. I don't know if you can see, it's kind of screened off on the left-hand side by this tree, and there's an old barn out there as well. So the light comes in and it slants down over this way and it hits this corner of the room, which means that even when direct sunlight comes in, it never quite gets into the still life setup box there. And it never quite hits the easel, which I think is fantastic, because that means that although it's a west-facing window and although I do get direct sunlight coming in there, it doesn't really affect my setups. Okay. So, you know, if I was painting now, this is the setup I would have with both lights going, because there's almost no light coming in from that window. I mean, to be fair, we're getting into evening now anyway, late afternoon, you know, so that kind of makes things a bit more complicated as well. Does that all make sense? Kelly says, same here with the lighting, more yellow or more white? I use all white. And actually, I still think it's slightly on the yellow side. I would prefer it to be even a little bit more white than that. They're very good, these lights, but I actually would prefer them if they were slightly white. So that's a little bit of the streaming setup. And you can see, I can show you more clearly now. Well, easel, still life setup and streaming setup. I can show you more clearly now. The problem I have with my easel, you see, it's right up to the top of the ceiling, because this is an old farmhouse and the ceilings are very low. And I want to raise this so I can get the paint tray down here higher. But I can't because it's hitting the ceiling. Incidentally, this is an AKG mic that I use. When I get close to it like this, the quality of my voice is much better. The rest of the time I'm on a radio mic, so you can hear me while I'm walking about. So the solution I've got for now is I've chopped it up on this canvas panel here. So this is an MDF board that I fix my paintings onto, because usually I'm working on light panels, so I just stick them on with blue tack. Sometimes they fall off, but not often. So I've had to raise it up by sticking another canvas underneath it. You know, it's no good. So I need a new easel. Either I need to saw a foot off the top of that easel, or I need a new easel. Perennial Munsell value chart is always around. It's from the big book. And then brushes. Now for brushes, I use, which ones would I use mostly? A range, really. I'll show you some of my favorites so you can see them when, like normally you only see the end of them when I'm painting. These, that's a Rosemary's Ivory White. I hate these brushes actually, but it's very good for some things. It's very, very springy and hard, and it makes almost like brick-like marks, really rectangular. This is a soft watercolor wash brush that I use for blending. Really light like this, soften everything. These, you can actually get a set of these. This is Rosemary's, but I do like these. I think mostly the Rosemary synthetics are pretty good. So this is, I think it's the Botanical set, I think they call it. It's basically just some soft soft pointed rounds of various sizes. These are my absolute favourites. These are Cornellison Hogs Series 606. You can get from Cornellison's in the UK. Really, really nice. And apart from that, I do use this sometimes, a big varnish brush for chucking things on. Another Cornellison brush. This gives you an idea of why I don't like Rosemary's Hogs. Look what's happened to that. That splayed like that after the first use, and that was not a cheap brush. Not happy with those at all. And then apart from that, medium-wise, I use only cold-pressed linseed oil and pure gum terps. And I usually have mostly linseed oil with a small amount of terps. And that's it. So there's nothing very, there's nothing earth-shattering about the kind of the materials I use in the setup. I try to make sure that I keep the materials that end up in the painting as simple as possible. Try not to add too much stuff. Look how dark it's getting outside now. You can see it better now I've got the light on. The camera is adjusting to the light. It's actually getting dark, and it's not really time to get dark yet. I'm going to take this, I'm going to switch this camera off so it's not so wobbly. Let's get rid of that one. You can see the whole studio. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to show you today, just to give you a quick kind of a look around and a look at the space. So floor-wise, I've got loads of space. I'm just a little bit limited on the ceiling height. So I think I'm going to get a new easel. You can get easels that are like that, but the paint tray is independent of the central post. So there's you actually, in the US, if you're in the US, you have a lot more choices there. I would love one of those big Hughes easels, but I'd shudder to think of the shipping costs, and they're not cheap. They're not cheap anyway to begin with. But I can get Richardson Best easels in the UK. And they do some pretty nice ones that look like, if not quite as good as the Hughes, they look like they might be pretty good, quite close. Let me have a quick check of the comments before I wrap up for today. Linda says also, under those throw rugs, is that a concrete floor? No, I wish it was, to be honest with you. This is carpet, which is why I'm in my socks. And I actually asked them before we moved in if I could take this carpet up, because underneath here is stone flags, original stone flags, which probably go back to like the last century or maybe the one before that. And we do have them in the hallway out there. We've still got the original flags. And what I was hoping was that I would be able to lift this carpet and have these gorgeous stone flags underneath. Granted, a little bit chilly, but I like a hard floor in a studio. It just seems right to me. And then I could put some rugs down, And they said, yeah, you can take the carpet up. So I started to peel it back, and I realized that the people who put the carpet down had put down some thick wooden panels, and then they'd put hardboard over that, and then over carpet underlay, and then the carpet. So actually they did a really good job. They shrunk the room by about 2 inches, the room height, by raising the floor. They did it really well, but I would prefer it if they'd done a really bad job, and then I could get the carpet up. And I looked at it and I thought, that's going to be so much work to take up. I'm going to just live with it. But it feels weird having carpet in a studio. So the rugs are to protect the carpet from paint. I mean, I'm a pretty tidy painter anyway, I hope, and won't make too much mess. So, but we'll see. That could be better. Kelly says, I've got those Neewer lights with the soft boxes. I struggle so very much with getting my light right. Kelly, do you have my email address? If you've got my email address, why don't you email me a photo of your lighting setup? Might be able to help a bit with that. Roberta, good to see you. Love seeing your studio. You're very welcome. I'm sorry, I'm not going to try and pronounce your name because I'll get it horribly wrong. It looks like an Eastern European name to me. I'm not going to guess the country because I will be wrong there as well. Where does the window light come from north, east, west? So yeah, I was talking about this at the beginning. So I've got three windows in here. This is my main window, which is west facing. So in the morning up until the afternoon, I'm fine. And actually I've found even in the afternoon, I'm fine because the sun comes down like this. So I don't get, as long as I keep my setup over this side of the room, I don't get direct sunlight on it. This window is north facing. Yeah? Everybody's just come home. Michelle's home with the kids. That window is north facing, and there's another one over there which is east facing, but that one is also fairly useful because that's screened off by a wall. So it does mean that the lighting is slightly low in this studio. I don't have the two beautiful big Northlight windows that I used to have, but I'm also thinking that it might make some creative possibilities, like especially using this window back here as part of the setups of the paintings. Michael says, how would you set the lights to paint from life at night? The only way I think you can do that, Michael, is you could do it, but I would use a single light, okay, on one side, and I would either that or I would put both lights over one side with the soft boxes on them. You definitely need to have soft boxes on them, otherwise you get very hard lighting, very hard edges to the shadow, and it looks very obviously lit by artificial light, unless that's aesthetically what you want, but I guess it probably wouldn't be. And then I would basically put them where the window is, and I would move the still life stand a little bit further away, because the light, you tend to get very sharp drop off when you're close to the lights. So you don't get that so much with windows, but with artificial lights, the light drops off very quickly the further you get away from the light. So I'd move the still life stand a little bit further away, and then I would use that light to paint by and to light the still life. You can do it that way, and I have done it, but I generally prefer to work with natural light if I possibly can. You're very welcome. Oh, lots of comments I haven't caught up with. Maya says, do you have your Neewer lights on during the day when you're not broadcasting? No, not usually. Only if I'm working from a photo and if the light isn't very good, which does happen sometimes, then I'll use them as a kind of a backup to the natural light. So sometimes I will put them on. Jamie says, hello, Jamie. I feel for you, Paul. The higher ceiling in my studio was one of my favorite features. When we moved, I was practically sitting on the floor to get my easel to full height beforehand. Yeah, it's a pain in the neck. It is a pain in the neck. But maybe I need to butcher my easel, or I need to get a new easel, and I will deal with it. The possibly nice thing about having low ceilings is this beam could potentially become a lighting and camera rail. I'm just imagining I could have cameras set up here instead, and I wouldn't need to have the tripods, and everything would be out of the way. So that's kind of tempting. But also, I think I mentioned this before, across the farmyard from the house is a very old, I think it's like 16th, 15th, 16th century, very old barn, beautiful, beautiful building with north-facing windows, double height, big space. It's unsafe at the moment, so it's closed off, but I've got my eye on it. So I'm hoping that, it might be possible for me to work out something with the charity that owns all these buildings at some point, and maybe have that as a studio at some point. We'll see. It would be an amazing place to paint. Janice says, I got the same easel free from a friend to cut a foot off the top to save our ceiling. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to have to do. Michael says, you could probably use a floor-to-ceiling 4x4 for the easel. I probably could, but then I couldn't move it around very easily. Irene, I will keep streaming, most definitely. Thanks, Sean. That's nice of you to say. Michelle, you get paint on the ceiling? How? You must paint very energetically. Those beautiful watercolors that you do, there must be some very energetic washes that goes on. Carlene, good to see you. Thank you. Wrap up now. So you've hopefully that was like reasonably instructive. You've had a good look at my space. One last shout before I go for the workshop, which I've got starting very soon, which is very much about the light, and some of the subjects are actually, well, all of the reference photos are taken from this, in this studio. Let's see if I can just, I should really have all this stuff set up beforehand, shouldn't I? Yeah, so if you want to find out anything about the workshop that I've got going on, it's going to start in about 2.5, 3 weeks. It's all about painting poetically with light. Click on that link and it will there's a load more information about what's going on. Yeah. I think I can put it on Facebook as well. Yeah, there we go. So listen, thanks very much for coming, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the look around. I'm amazed that I can actually use my phone. I'm going to put it on again because I think it's so amazing that I can actually do this. I mean, I don't know what possibilities this is going to make for streaming, but I know you can get some pretty nice, like, gimbals. I mean, I'm just walking around with this, obviously, but you can get some pretty nice gimbals. Look how dark it is. It's got dark now. Look, you can see out the window, it's dark. You can get like these gimbals that kind of allow you to pan about. So this might make for some good possibilities for streaming. Oh, this, by the way, down here, that's the switch that controls the cameras. Oh, look at all these leads everywhere. I've got to sort that out. Anyway, enough of making you sick by walking around with this camera on. Thank you very much for coming, everybody. If there's anything that you would like to see more of, just drop me an email or leave a comment and let me know, and I'll do my best to show you. Okay, thanks very much, everybody. I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.